to me was that's not only the worst case, but it's the worst case to the point of being misleading.
Hey, Joe.
And we got a quorum.
Hey, David, how you doing?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the town of Nantucket. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the town of Nantucket Finance Committee meeting for Thursday, December 18th. This meeting is called to order. Is there any public comment that is not on our agenda today? Any items that are not on our agenda? Hearing none. Move over for approval of minutes for December 8th. We do not have December 15th, but we can move ahead with the 8th. Any questions or approval? Move approval. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion on the motion? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Good. That motion carries. Committee reports. There was an audit committee meeting the other day. Things seem to be moving along pretty smoothly, and my impression is compared to 3 years ago, things are progressing quite well. And then, again, kudos to finance and to administrative staff for that. The next meeting will be, I believe, January 27th, and that will be discussion of the management letter, so things are moving along. I don't have any other committee reports. Any other committee reports?
No, the capital program committee is going to speak today, so that's the report.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
You didn't?
I just got the report today. I didn't even read it. Okay. Thank you. All right. So, and then, Chief, you in a hurry?
I am not.
Okay. It's not, because you don't mind? Okay. You can talk about the fire station, maybe. Okay. All right. So the next item is presentation and review of the capital program committee report for fiscal year 2016 capital projects. Hopefully you saw that the report came today, and so I hope you had a chance to look at it. In full disclosure, I have not. I was a little busy today, so I'll be following along as we go ahead. I would like to introduce the chairman of the committee, Mr. Stambaugh, and if you want to introduce members of your committee that are here, I assume. I know Mr. that young fellow over there, Mr. Morrison.
The younger dude here.
And who's the younger dude there?
Peter and repeat.
Peter McEachern.
Okay.
New member of the committee.
Okay.
Peter Morrison is an old member of the committee.
Yeah.
Richard Hussey.
Richard, thank you. Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Two members are missing, Tobias
Okay.
and Lowell.
Mr. Lowell, that's okay. I think we can proceed without Mr. Lowell. That's fine. Okay. I would ask, since we are on tape, if you would mind coming up and just speak on a mic just for the members in the audience here. Oh, one other note. Stephen Morey will not be joining us, and hopefully Jim Kelly and Cliff Williams will be joining us later.
And we have to leave at 5:20.
Okay, thank you. 5:20. Okay. So that mic is on. The floor is all yours, and I'll be quiet.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we introduced the members. I've written some notes here so I don't stray too far and all that.
That's
Capcom's been meeting every week since September, and I know for you guys that's not very much, but that's what's been happening. We've been reviewing the capital requests from the various departments and enterprise funds every week, realizing that there were two large items, the new fire station and the new school. We worked to remove or postpone items that we deemed nice to have, but not necessary right now, or we did not have sufficient information to make a decision. So what we've done is what you see in that spreadsheet. There's no, we're not going to talk about stuff that we pushed off or anything else, so we just write net to what we're recommending. The resulting, besides the fire station and the school and the design for the our New Island home, the resulting $7.425 million recommended is a result of that process and can be funded as you see in that executive summary. So I'm going to dwell on the executive summary for a bit.
Okay.
Because I think that is pretty salient.
Good.
At the same time, we've been gathering information to update the 10-year plan, which we did for the first time last year. We're still doing that. It's better this year because it's the second year we've done it, but we're still learning about the process. You'll see on the spreadsheet behind, the next 9 years are out there, but they're less firm or not very firm at all. But we plugged in some numbers if we needed to, just to make sure that we were, looking down the road and doing planning. As you can see from the list in the executive summary for the next 9 years, except for sewer, there's no other project on the horizon that comes anywhere close to the new school cost. So, and on the executive summary, you see we plugged a number in for Nantucket, Fisher's Landing, and Somerset collection system. Mm-hmm. That is a plugged number. We got that from nowhere. We'd asked the selectmen for how it was going to be financed, and and they're not ready to give us a number. But we thought once we get the 10-year plan done and try to model it, we ought to have something in there, even if that's not the right number. Okay. We did the same thing for the school last year. If you remember, Joe, we plugged in $30 million, and Michael did not want us to. He did not want to give a number, and you can see why. But we needed something, and we plugged that number in. Next, for the fire station and the school, we're fortunate to have members of our committee that are also on those committees. Peter McEachern is on the school building committee, and Peter Morrison is on the fire station committee. So I've included their reports to the committee after the executive summary, and they're here to answer any questions, and so is Mark. Hopefully the justification and background that is provided there will help you if we get into long discussions at annual town meeting. The capital plan, so let me just go to I don't have page numbers, but the capital plan that looks like this, which is the general fund spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. This is the same with one exception. The school, on the second page, on the presentation by Libby at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, was it last week? The week before? Last week? Seems like was presented as 40. And that's the number we had been given, but Peter has said they're continuing to work and get better and refine, and they think the architect thinks it's going to be between 42 and 47. I'm sure they don't want to be held to those numbers yet either. But so we put in 47 into the capital plan. Well, since it's been since I assumed you guys had already seen it because of it being presented at the Board of Selectmen meeting, I didn't know whether you wanted me to go item by item, or you wanted to ask me questions.
Yeah, I think we can just ask questions. I don't think it's
Move
need
it
to go
along
item by
a
item.
little bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Are there any? You ready? Do you open up for questions now?
Yes, I am.
Does anyone have any questions? Run ahead.
So, okay, so for the 7.425 items, they're really road maintenance, building maintenance, replacing vehicles, doing the pier. I mean, these are, I would say, things that are necessary, and we can certainly afford to do them. We have funding for them, and so it's a pretty net presentation. The one thing we did put up there was the design for the island home. We put it in a borrowing of $1 million. The debt service will probably be paid out of the general fund, but it won't be that much. The enterprise funds are next. Don't see anything there that's not going to be funded except by the enterprise funds. So we don't see any of those items that are going to impact the general fund.
Phil?
Yes.
Sorry. On those enterprise funds, the sewer and the water projects that the water companies wanted, I mean, are they, you say they're funded out of the enterprise funds through their own borrowing?
Borrowing or their own retained earnings or whatever. Yeah.
Or rates.
Rates, yes.
So the presumption is that they'll be able to alter rates and service the debt to build the sewer. Okay.
Well, in here, there's no building of sewer
Yeah.
yet. This is just to get the wastewater treatment plant up to what it should have been all along. Let's put it that way.
Just think of it as the general fund and everything else. The airport has its own fund, and the our Island Home, so they're all like, almost like separate checkbooks. That's the way I always try to look at it.
Yeah, unless they impact the general fund, we,
John, you have a question?
The town borrows, the borrowing is going to be done by the town. But the debt service is paid for by the enterprise fund. We talked about that they do their own borrowing. They don't do their own borrowing per se. They pay for the debt service.
good clarification. Thank you.
Okay, so,
Yeah, they're just backed by the full paid and credit.
Yep.
right, so the $8.8 million Surfside wastewater treatment, that clearly would require, they're not going to raise rates enough to cover $8 million project, right? They'll borrow the money and spread it out,
Well, they don't have,
I presume.
yeah, they don't have enough free cash.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
There'll be a presentation from the sewer and solid waste, and this will be discussed further. So if you're not sure,
Right.
we will revisit this later on.
Okay, I just was,
Okay. No, ask away, but just, John, you have a question?
Well, it's not a question,
Yeah,
it's
Tom.
they don't have those kind of retained earnings, if that's what you mean.
right.
No, they don't have the the sewer's going to have to, it's going to have to be borrowed, and then the debt service is going to go against the sewer P&L, right?
Got it.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay.
Oh, who said, did you want to talk about the school and the fire department separately?
Yeah, why don't we? Yeah, that's
Because I'm
fine. That's
thinking
easy.
we've got some,
That's good, since
Good
members of your
people
committee
here.
worked on it. That's fair,
Right.
sure. Yeah. And you can do whenever you'd like.
well, let's do the fire station first, and
Okay.
and Peter's done a one-pager, just so
See
that
that?
you can understand, why. Mark is here as well. We're hoping it's a slam dunk at annual town meeting, but
You always hope.
I saw the article in the paper today that tried to create, that it's not necessarily a done deal and all that, and I'm thinking, where did she get that? But,
I didn't see the paper.
yeah, that was a front-page article on capital programs.
I missed that, too. You come on up. Yep.
Yes, you did.
And the reason why is, and this is on for the members of our audience at home.
Okay. Did you want to ask me questions, or do you want me to give you the 30-second?
How about you give the 30-second
All right.
and then open it for questions?
All right.
Fair
Actually,
enough?
the 30-second kind of presentation begins with, I think I'm expressing my own view, but I'm hoping it also reflects the Capcom, just with respect to the, we got two big projects, and there seems to be a question of, can we afford to start them both in the same year? And based on Brian's preliminary smoothing exercise that we've seen, which is simply spelling out scenario, near-term forecast, and beyond that, hypothetical scenario, an analytic scenario for evaluating what the worst case would be. I've reached four conclusions. The first conclusion is that both projects are essential to the town's future, and that delaying one or the other because we think we can't afford it is going to prove costly to taxpayers, and that there's no need to delay them. My other conclusion is that each project is ready to go, picking up on a point that John Tiffany continues to remind us that we shouldn't do it until we're ready to go. And I think I'm persuaded that both projects are ready to go. And finally, most important, I'm convinced, based on Brian's preliminary analyses of doing the smoothing, that the town has the fiscal capacity to initiate both projects in the same year and to see them through to conclusion. So that's kind of setting the stage for it. With the fire station, I think I've given you a one-pager which basically says this is a lot more than just about a new fire station. It's recognizing the fact that there have been important secular changes that are driving demand and that are really transforming both the technology, advancing the technology, and transforming public expectations as to what is a standard expectation about emergency services that fire departments provide. And we're now in an era where where the fire department spends most of its effort preventing things from happening rather than responding to fires. The work group has put together a very thorough report showing that there's a success story, which is not very many fires anymore, but the price of the success is you get a lot of alarms that have to be treated as emergencies.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
I was like to mention the WPI project that
Yes.
just finished up. Are you going to touch on that at all?
I can touch on that. I think that's what I should touch on in
Thank you.
closing.
Good. Okay.
We had a team put together that kind of picked up the analysis where I had left it off with my simple-minded late evening spreadsheets and, preoccupation with data. And they took it to not only to the next level, which was what I had hoped, but they took it to 2 higher levels. They, in fact, jumped to a point where I thought it would be another 1 or 2 projects before we would have in place what could be used as basically an in-house analytic capability for the chief to use. And the report has, I think the presentation is probably worth viewing on TV. I would not recommend the 150-page report. But the bottom line is that we now have the capability to evaluate how the department delivers services, how it can deploy its staff in a dynamic fashion, how we can approach future decisions about evaluating potential satellite stations that we might need looking out 5 or 10 years, and recognizing that building the new station at Fort Fairgrounds is a wise measure that leaves lots of options open for the future and allows the department to really bring itself up to the standards of today's world and keep its equipment inside rather than outside, and basically start to think about how it can make better decisions with the data that it has in-house.
Okay.
All right?
Good. Yeah, that sounds good.
Do you have any questions?
Are your 30 seconds up?
Yeah.
Nice job, Peter.
Okay.
Christie.
That was a little longer.
Yeah.
Is that report available, Peter?
My understanding is, I certainly have a copy. It's going to be up on the town website, I think, in a matter of days. I would urge you to see their presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, because you need to see that first before you dig into the report. The report it's like a massive doctoral dissertation.
And I guess for full disclosure,
Yeah.
They asked me, they interviewed from our standpoint, and what impressed me about it was their response time analysis.
Yeah.
And I think that ties into what you discussed about with satellite stations in the future. It was quite interesting,
Yeah.
quite illuminating.
We now have the capability really to simulate any location where we could find a piece of property and say, because, putting a satellite is not saying, here's the best place, let's buy the land. If you have a place, they have constructed a way of simulating it, and you can say, well, this would do a better job or just marginally better.
That's really interesting. Sorry.
John? I think
It's not mine.
I don't like to read big reports either, but I assume there's a summary or an executive summary.
They always have an executive summary. And I would say if you go to the report, read the executive summary, but I think you'll get a much more vivid and meaningful sense of what they have done by seeing the PowerPoint, because the PowerPoint was a well-crafted way of explaining what they've done, and you say, I don't need to know how you did it, I just need to know that you can do it. That's really what it is.
Is that going to be on?
That should be up on the town website in a matter of days or a week. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
They were, last time I talked to the young ladies who were running it, they were going to send me a copy, and if they follow through, I'll be certainly going to forward it on to everybody. So,
Anybody wants a copy, email me and I'll send you a copy. They were all sort of in a downward spiral, all coming down with the flu and everything else, so I only got my copy today, and that was because I begged for it.
do you have a question?
Yeah. Either to Peter or to Mark. Excuse me, over the past couple of years, it's sort of been a foregone conclusion that the fire station would move from its current location. How, and I'm going to say will you, because I suspect you'll get the question, how will you respond to the detail in which you went and evaluated the current location for retrofit versus just going immediately to a solution that had the fire station going somewhere else?
There's a simple answer. I think it would be more expensive to retrofit it, and you would end up still with insufficient space unless you could buy more land, but Stop and Shop has got it.
Do you have the data to support that? Did somebody do a study to conclude that, or is it just the sense of members of the committee?
Can I touch base?
Yeah, I think the chief ought to answer.
In 2006, when we were first looking at this as public safety, central dispatch, and community space as well, the company that we were working with, they didn't do an in-depth study on it, but they did do a square footage study in the design, the square footage of the lot, what they could fit on the lot. The expense of the building, I think it was about probably $1 million to $1.5 million less expensive, but it was it might have been 2/3 of what we needed. And from what I recall, that price was about $9 million. That would have been to retrofit that building. When in 2008, it would have been just a little bit over $11 million to plug it in right here. And some of the other concerns that we really looked at is during the time, if we were going to do that and end up with what Kessel Booth was considering inadequate space, we would have had to find another location for at least 2 years anyways, which just wasn't going to work while they were tearing that building down. One of the bigger hurdles on it was the sewer main, high-pressure sewer main that was going through that would have even added additional costs to either move the sewer main or either support the sewer main that wasn't figured in. The problem with that is moving forward in 2008, making a decision to do it as a phased plan, building this section. We didn't have the funding to continue further just for them to do an actual full-depth study on that. They just pretty much came up with the square footage cost of renovating. And that's all we have in regards towards that.
So my unsolicited advice is you go forth publicly to support your case, that you make sure you have some good answers to that you're going to get this question. I mean, I've gotten it on the street. That's why I'm asking the question. And although I wasn't here at the time that the voters approved the police station, I mean, it clearly was somewhat perhaps of a contentious issue. So I would urge you to make sure that the reasons why you're moving are out there, that the public can see them and draw their own conclusions, rather than just make the quick leap to the fact that we had to move to another location. Because there will be people that will say this is a much more expensive solution, and that, maybe we could have done something in the current location at far less cost.
I agree with that.
Okay. All right. Christie?
Peter or Mark, I guess, did you guys review what challenges you might still have with the facility being in this location that you might have to deal with? Is there any infrastructure improvements you might need to do around the island or in some of the local close-by intersections or stuff, or what's...
I'll let the chief answer in the main, but my recollection is that there were some questions about where the exit would be for quick response emergency vehicles. And also, I think the recommendation that the fire station work group came up with was that there should be a hard look taken at I think it was the exterior of the building. It was like there's a cheaper way to build the building. It may not look as nice, but it would be cheaper. There are cost savings that are possible in the original plan. So going forward, try to realize those cost savings. And I don't recall exactly what they were, but it was something to do with the exterior. Do you remember that?
That was to do with the exterior, but additionally, you're talking as responding?
Just general function of the department.
There's quite a few things we looked at.
Chief, can I interrupt for a second? The only reason I asked, would you mind coming up here and sit in the microphone?
Yeah.
Here's the only reason why. I want everybody at home to see it. Right. So, thank you. Sorry.
No problem. We looked at a lot of things. Obviously, we were looking at the infrastructure, what was going to be fixed, possibility of that in the future, with the roundabouts at this end down by Bartlett Road, Surfside Road. work done on the rotary in regards to its response time and traffic flow. Different areas of the island. I was much more comfortable with responding from here for the pros of the setup and less congestion, to be able to hit either end of the island, whether I'm heading towards Surfside Road or heading over to Old South Road to respond to town or the airport. The other area that we're looking at, of course, is the midsection area from what we would be moving from for having calls there, which you would still have, depending on whether it's the schools or the location, you'd have either option to go to. With the road improvements and without the road improvements, we still would have reasonable times to do that. And of course, we still, we still have Newtown Road, but we would try to use that at a limited access, obviously. Maybe look at some road improvements in that area as well. And the idea behind that would be that road would cover a small area within the roundabout there. Not First National, being dated here. Stop and Shop. The problem that we're having there, or my biggest issue there, is the congestion. From the time when the building was put there in 79, 80, there's been a lot of commercial building there, and it's continuing. The pedestrian traffic, it's just really difficult to get through across the ramps, as well as the vehicle traffic. It's turned out to be an issue. And every road coming into that area now has businesses on it, and it's just going to get more difficult to manage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could I
Phil?
just
Sure.
follow?
Go ahead.
Because I'm kind of intrigued.
Go ahead.
A Q&A to be handed out would be, I don't know what you're planning to do, the study group. These are great questions, and if you can answer them ahead of the meeting, you'd be a lot better off.
Well, you all may or may not know that the Civic League is going to have 2 forums in January and February, and part of that will be to educate the public, and FAQ handout would be an obvious thing to do. I'll take note of that. Could I make one more comment? I just wanted to say that, with respect to the location, this is my, view of how that locational choice should be made, and I think people sort of saw it that way in varying degrees. You have a place where if you said, well, let's cram a fire station into there now by expanding it, rebuilding it, you literally would be cramming it in, but you'd have no further room to grow. So it's a bad decision unless you want to freeze the world as of 2014. The second thing is, what you have there is a piece of real estate which has locational value that varies according to its function. You can put a fire station there, you could put a skyscraper there, you could put a commercial enterprise there. That location has increasing value because of where it is, and to me it constitutes an asset that has a bright prospect for the future. Somebody's going to want to buy it, and if the town can hold on to it and eventually sell it, translate it into the money that might go toward funding this fire station. That was my analysis.
Okay.
One final point. Is there more questions?
How about Craig, you have a question, then we'll go to the final point.
It's more of a comment, and in this day and age of social media, I assume you recall when this building was being presented, the police chief and others made I guess there's a YouTube video showing the condition of South Water Street, what the condition of that building was. It's very effective. And I don't know if you've done that already for the existing fireplace, but that could be also very effective.
You're correct. We did do that in 2008. I think that was through Gino. And we're planning to reconvene the fire station work group to start with a PR effort on this. And I totally agree with you. That option will be there, I'm hoping, in the near future.
Okay. Back to you,
Thank
Phil.
you. One final, the next page there is that we did a little, Ryan did a little study projection of what the tax impact might be. And so it would not impact the taxpayer until 2019. $5.39 a thousand for residential. This is rough now, and this doesn't break it off into
100,000.
$100,000.
How about $1 million?
And $9.52 for commercial, so it's not huge impact.
And actually, I want to applaud you and you, Brian, but on that analysis, it certainly puts it in a light that's more understandable for us. unlike me as a neophyte on this.
Yes, if
Thank
we
you.
can afford it.
Yeah, no, I think that's what we need to carry forward. I guess, my only comments at this stage is that, assuming this gets a positive, the station gets a positive recommendation by this committee, is that the comments that have been made about bringing the points up of why it's needed and the points of why the existing facility is so out of date are going to be crucial to getting this passed. And so this is one step in that. So, again, good job on doing this. Okay.
Thank you both.
Sure. All right. All set then? Any other questions on the fire station? We will be just repeating this again when I think it's on the 15th or 16th when you'll be giving your budget, we'll be talking about this again. Okay. And then after that, too. I forgot what day it is. I got to look.
We had to change it a little.
Is it the 5th? I forgot what day. Do you remember, Pam? I don't have it with me. I know you sent it to me. I didn't have a chance to look at it.
12.
This is the 12th. Okay. So on the 12th, we'll be revisiting this. Okay. Very good.
Well, Matt Lowell says that the fire station in the school are just a slam dunk, that, everybody knows they're going to be, poopy. Nobody's going to go against educating the kids, et cetera, but I think I'd like to have Peter come up.
Okay.
There's several pages here that explain the school and maybe update you on where it stands at this point in time.
Okay. Very
I
good.
think it's very meaningful to hear this, because it's a big one.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It actually could get bigger, but we don't say that at Finance Committee meetings. Gentlemen, good evening. Peter McEachran. I come to you as a CAPCOM member. I also come to you as a person who sits on the school building committee, which we joined at the request of Michael Kozart, our superintendent, back in September. I also sit here as a father of 4 kids who are in the school system as we speak, so I guess I'm eyes and ears on the wall and on the road. In your packet, you have a few documents that relate to the school and the school building committee. You also have requests in the fiscal year 2016, a couple of items that I'd like to start with, and they seem minuscule in the amount of the monies, but when you look at the trailers or the portable classrooms, you'll see there's an additional request for 2 trailers for fiscal year 2016, and that kind of sets the stage for the numbers that we'll talk about now. Obviously, you have to add more trailers because you're having more children join our school system. This is not just about a new 3 through 5 elementary. It's also about a middle school addition that's close to 9,000 to 10,000 square feet. And if you look at the demographer's report that Michael Kozart had put out, you can see that, over the past 5 years, our kids have increased by 25%. But if you go back to when I actually joined the island in 2006, you're well over 30%. You were, at that time, about 1,000 students within the system. Today, we're just shy of 1,600. So when, as Phil had mentioned, the $30 million that was supplied, it was a number that was just kind of basically a plug number, was pulled out of the air. It wasn't until a month ago, on November 19th, that we had received a report from, at that time, the architect, is still the architect for the school, that came up with a footprint at that point in time. We had just picked a site, and the footprint of the school could be anywhere at that point from 69,000 square to 73,000 square feet. So that's kind of a pretty broad range even today. I mean, the maturation process of picking a site is you pick a site based on a footprint, based on what you think you need. That has just happened. So at that point, we came up with a number of $40 million. And that was just a basic, easy takeoff on square footage times X dollars per square foot. The infancy of where we are today is still that the site now we have that. We think that we know how many rooms and how many square foot, but it still has not gone to a cost estimator because we haven't even been through HTC prelim meetings, which have a tendency to make potentially some of the project costs go up and down, more up than down. So we're at our crossroad where we thought it would be an injustice to bring to this committee a $40 million number. That's why we provided a range of 42 to 47, as Phil has mentioned before. And I guess I would turn it over to you for any questions you may have relevant to where we are today with that number.
Okay. Thank you. Before we go to questions, I would like to bring up a point that you have on page 11, and it's about the bridge financing.
Yep.
And I want to be very clear on this. This is money that would be requested out of this fiscal year's budget. That is not, the budget has already been set, so the free cash that is referred to here, that is not a possibility for this year. And I have had discussions with the superintendent about that. The only options for this year would be coming to the town reserve fund, which is at the discretion of this committee. But unfortunately, the amount of money that we're looking at would certainly, the reserve fund, even if approved, would not be enough. I know there was I think a mention here about private borrowing and that the school may do, and we certainly would support that, but I just want to just be clear on that.
No, yeah, it's a great point, and if I could add more specifics to that, the request was an inquiry. It has not been made by our superintendent. If the request does come, that's his obligation to his own project and the project. But I think the sums of monies they're looking for, if it is requested, is more like $270,000 to help on that bridge funding.
And I'm assuming he'll be contacted. Last time, I haven't talked to Michael in a couple of weeks, but
Correct.
If he can, we'll be.
I'm sure that if he needs to, he will be in touch.
He always is. Okay, great. Questions, Craig?
Sure. Just a question off the bat. In going over some of these materials, I heard somewhere that there's potentially state funding available. Is that true? Is it not true? Someone said there was...
I can answer that a little bit. And again, you can jump on in too. The school was on a list of communities that do get funds, but they actually pulled themselves off the list. So at this point, right now, there would be no state money coming. They can get themselves back on the list, but it would be a number of years before we'd see the fruits of that.
That's accurate.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes I get it wrong.
Is there a reason for that?
You know, I'm not quite sure on the reasons. I'll look up. I don't know the reasons why. And that's because I haven't talked to Mike Cozart since I.
It's kind of like frustrating.
It is frustrating. I'm frustrated about it too, and I don't know the reasons. But I'm assuming that much respect for Michael Cozart. I'm sure they're justified, but it just, without knowing more, it is frustrating.
If I may, even though we joined the committee back in September, when it started with the general public being added to that committee, it really comes down to timing. When you get into the queue and when you go the process through the Mass School Building Association, it's all about timing. And the building, if you go that route, would probably not be in place until the year 2019. So at that point, we're exacerbated. We'd be coming before this, or I'm sure Mike would come before Capcom and then to FinCom, relevant to requesting more and more modular. That was the reason.
Okay. Joe?
Just a question on growth in the school system. 1,600 students now. Obviously, when you build something as big as this, your plan for, there must be some demographic expectation over the next 10 years. Presumably, you don't want to come back in 5 and say, oops, it should have been 50% bigger or something. So I'm just curious on what sort of data the committee's looked at and how long should this project
it is a great
provide the capacity that time is.
Great question. The demographer was asked to go outwards of numbers of years, not 5, not 10, but even 15, 20, so that when we looked at a physical site to pick, that we were picking a site that maybe in 15 years, if they needed to even build more or an additional building, because it's obviously, think of a child getting in pre-K and then moving up the ranks. And will there be a day that the high school needs to take over the entire high school / middle school? There's a strong potential. We've looked at that. We thought of it. We used those numbers to pick the site for this school so we wouldn't bottleneck ourselves 15 years or more down the road. Will we need to address it within 5 or 10? No. 15 to 20, strong potential, if we believe all the demographers' numbers.
David?
Peter, was there any consideration given to acquiring, either by negotiation or eminent domain, the houses along First Way so that you'd have a unified property
Campus structure?
and campus?
It was brought up, but the thought was, let's not make enemies, let's make everyone an advocate for the program. Try to do what you can do with existing land without having to go and pluck up by eminent domain or buying out. So wanting to be as positive, getting as many votes as we could, we didn't want to upset the neighborhood.
well, that said, and I can appreciate that, would you end up with a better campus plan if it was, and more flexibility?
Going down,
I can
yeah.
appreciate that there are, however many people somebody knows, 6 or
Yeah.
so property owners, and it's clearly an emotional issue. But on the other hand, they're clearly now, they're surrounded, and they're going to be even more
Absolutely.
surrounded.
Yeah, absolutely.
6 or 3.
Well, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
You have the ones on Bacchus, near Bacchus, you also have the First Way on both sides.
There is, I guess to answer your question, down by Bartlett, not by Bacchus Lane, there is some talk about taking by eminent
Somewhere down
domain.
in,
Yeah, down in that. There is some discussion, and I think that's, planning was researching that, and I haven't heard that recently. I don't know if there's anything that you could add to that. That's the only thing I was aware of that they were going to be taking, but those houses that you're asking about, I think they're off. They're just built.
I think the committee, the school building committee is also responsible from a fiduciary standpoint on a project that in theory goes from 30 million that people thought to 47. Well, you start taking properties and I'm sure the number goes up and up and up. The good news is, David, if I could go back to that, is the fact that the physical plant today, nothing would change relevant to where the athletic fields are. That stays intact, so you don't have to do anything for the near future. The place where the school has been sited is a parking lot, and even though we're taking a parking lot, we actually, by increasing other areas that are not under construction, we actually go up in our parking. And that does not take in consideration the written agreements between the town and the ice rink on the use of their parking, and they're using town parking.
Okay. Further questions? Okay. Thank you for that presentation. It certainly is helpful. One other note, I believe, and again, I don't know if this date has changed, but talking with the architects, January 22nd was a cutoff date for when the final financial proposal would be. And when that comes on, if and when, assuming that's still the case, then I think we'll forward. I think you might want to weigh in on that, and that's fine with us.
Okay.
But I think that will be in the warrant. I believe that they're still working, fine-tuning things.
Are you saying that the school is going to be a separate warrant item?
I'm assuming it would be.
I
That's more.
was going to ask that question. Would the fire department, our fire station?
I think so. Both. I think they'll be
so
there
you'd
separate.
Have Article 10 would be
Article 10 would be the general fund.
And then the other
Right.
two are going to be separate.
Well, that's a good question. I think, and Libby, if you want to jump in, the way I foresee this is that the general fund will be on Article 10 as always. Be a separate debt exclusion article for the fire station, a separate debt exclusion article for the school, and then Article 13 for the enterprise.
So when you asked me that question about January 22nd, is that the amount of money?
No.
Is that what you're looking for?
Well, I think what my understanding from the architects of that, and this is a discussion of 4 weeks ago, so it could have changed, is that I expressed the opinion that you've got to get things done if you want to go for annual town meeting. You have to come up with a number. They, in return, said, well, we'll have things finalized or firmed up by January 2nd, 22nd at that point. So I guess going back to my original comment is that the $47 million is fine, but it's not etched in stone until January 22nd. I think that's a better way of putting it.
And if I could just add, design development, which is, if you gentlemen have or have not run a project before, that's when you really start putting, dotting your I's and crossing your T's. Design development on this project is not even going to start until January. So once again, it's a budgetary number. It's based on a square footage. That'll be fine-tuned if, of course, if and only if we get past the ATM with positives.
And I think, assuming, I think the language of not to exceed would fit in here. So say if they would think 40, it won't go over 47 million, it might be the kind of thing. And I'm going to look out at you if that, or anybody wants to weigh in. But that's the way I would think we would get around that.
A safer way.
Is that? That's the question. Do you need to get back to your committee and ask about
Well, actually, they're meeting as we speak right now, where I'm supposed to be at.
They are.
You're trying to get to that meeting.
Okay, well, we won't
All right,
keep it.
fine.
Give them my best. Oh, you got a question, Jeff?
It's really about procedure. So
Yeah.
the number, just following what you were just saying,
Sure.
so the committee comes and says, well, we think the estimate's $47 million.
Mhm.
In the annual town meeting, let's say they approve it.
Okay.
But then you're doing your design development and you find out in July that it's really $52 million.
You got to come back.
Then what happens?
Well, let's assume the 47 million is approved by ballot box, so the process always goes on through.
Right.
And so that is when the short-term borrowing can begin and that whole process. If it comes back that the price tag is higher, then the process for that difference would start again.
Then that's sort of a special town meeting.
Well, it could be, especially, then there are a whole host of arguments on that. It could be that there's enough funding in place for the year to bring it back in the spring. It could be a special if possible. That there's a whole host of things that can be done. It might not even be a town meeting. It might be able to find it in the budget. There's a whole, so there'll be a number of options. No, that's fine. That's a good question.
That's a good question.
That is.
Well, I guess I'm going to ask the question then.
Yep.
It's a double-edged sword. If you say, gee, let's go for the max because we don't want to have to come back, then you're proposing to the town an even bigger number than
Potentially.
47. And so you're protecting yourself, but on the other hand, you may not get it passed. So it's
That's true. It is. It's so hopefully again going back to the estimate that the architects and planners come in will be the accurate. And this has been a moving target. I mean, I've had discussions for months with the school people, and I know they're frustrated, and they've gone some dead ends in the process, and and hopefully it seems like the individuals that are doing it now certainly have a good grasp on it. So hopefully, again,
well, I like a lot of things that they've done here. They've gotten the superintendent out of the school. They've gotten the early childhood development out of the school. I mean, it's becoming classrooms, and that's what it should be.
Yeah.
So when the superintendent, so he's going to move into a trailer or a double wide or whatever we're calling it, and then he's going to move into the new middle school when that gets finished. So that will be office space. So they've done an awful lot of, I think, neat things with this plan.
They're trying to cover. They're trying to be diligent about it. Yeah.
And again, we put the
Yep, I like that
the
too.
estimate there. So.
I've been looking at that. I like that. That's a little bigger number.
It is a big number, a big gore number. Not a big number, just a bigger number.
But no, that's, again, the same points so as before. That's great. Okay, so covered the school and fire, and again, with the school, they'll be presenting early in February. Hopefully, we'll have the final number, and the warrant will be out, so we'll go from there. Okay. Anything?
That's really all I have.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah, we're going to, the committee's going to continue to work on the 10-year plan and refine that and get some charts going in terms of tax impact and debt service and all that, but we're just heading down that road.
Now, this is a question for me, and I'm going to say, like I said, I haven't been able to review this thoroughly. The Tier 1, is that the necessary projects?
Yeah, there's no Tier 2s.
Okay, great. I just wanted to be sure, that's what I thought. Oh, yeah, David, you have a question?
Yeah, if I may, I had a few questions.
Sure.
Non-school, So, on the Baxter Road alternate access construction, $500,000. The comment is that can repay through betterments, won't borrow until needed. I'll ask the question, is there a betterment plan in place?
There will be. We don't even have the plan yet for the alternate access. The
So-
betterment plan would be that however much we expect it to cost, it would be assessed to the applicable letters.
So I know that, I know
I'm not
that's,
sure what you mean by
well, I'm just responding to the comments. So when it comes time for us to say, yes, we like this idea, or no, we don't, will there be a plan? Or is this going to be one of those things where we think there's going to be a plan, and then we run into a buzzsaw of criticism from a policy/political perspective? Now we've committed to financing it, but we can't push through a betterment plan. Do you follow the question I'm basically asking?
I think I do. The board, I don't think, will proceed with this without a betterment plan.
And if aren't the abutters actively being involved in this, so they supposedly they're being updated as this?
There's an effort to involve them, yes.
That's what I thought.
There's not unanimity right now on the alternate access site.
Okay.
But is it fair to say that the board will have an agreement in place when you come back for this?
I hope so. We thought a couple weeks ago that we were sort of close to an agreement, but it turned out that we were not. So I think the idea is that it also says that it wouldn't borrow until needed. we need to have the authority in place in the event that the road needs to be put in somewhere. So if we have to pick a place where it's gonna go.
Yeah. You need the ability to do it.
We
Yeah.
need the ability to do
Yeah.
it. But the idea is to assess the betterments always, and we've been talking about it very publicly all along. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that we're planning to assess that.
Yeah.
But there shouldn't be a legal roadblock. or anything
No, I just foresaw there might be a political small p
like that.
roadblock.
Well, yeah, you never can.
No. Okay.
Christie? Oh,
Yeah,
no,
no. Keep.
Oh.
I just come back to me.
Okay.
so.
Christie?
So I have a question on DPW garage renovation, new design.
Mm-hmm.
Does that piggyback on the 9-year outlook?
There'll be a number, yeah. There is a number. We don't know what the exact number is, but it'll be a lot of money. Not, it's not going to be
So the
47 million, but yeah, this is the design, and then the intent is to build a DPW garage that will house the equipment, because a lot of their equipment is sitting outside rusting away. And so then ultimately, that's going to help us, because the equipment's going to last longer and be in better shape.
Got it. I was just thrown off by the word renovation. Are they doing something sooner than later, or is it not really getting renovated? It's just going to rely on. So is that just the design portion of it?
My recollection is just design.
Right.
Yeah, it's just design.
So we
Not-
should,
so
we can take the
renovation is-
renovation out of there.
Design.
Okay.
Yeah,
David?
that's a good point.
Yeah, and sort of actually somewhat the same kind of question Christie has. There are a number of items in here that have continuing funding requirements. So even though we're making, so for example, right below the Baxter Road is Boulevard reconstruction. So even though we're making a $1 million commitment, we're actually making a $3 million commitment. So
Good point.
I think that the
That's-
committee should know that
That shows
we're
up
not
here.
in just for
One year.
$1 million for a year.
And it's more than Boulevard, too.
Yeah.
It's all the way.
I mean, there are a couple of other
Well,
things
the
like.
other one, is- and I'm glad you brought it up,
Yeah.
because it's long-range planning, and we were kind of help us to know what to do about it, and that's two Fairgrounds Road. We're doing, a design for, I don't know, 400,000, I think that's the right number, and the building's going to be 3.6. There's a lot of potential for a new building, and maybe you want to do something different and make it a bigger building, or add more space, or do something different, but all that, the building committee needs to kind of figure out, because it gets wrapped up with 20 South Water, 37 Washington, and two Fairgrounds. So it's kind of, but we pushed off, that's one of the things we pushed off, was 20 South Water, because there was no consensus as to what that building was going to be, were we going to tear it down, or whatever.
Along the same lines with two fairgrounds, did you all talk with the water company about consolidating, so the water company doesn't have to spend $3.5 million to build their own building?
It was brought up.
It was brought up. Okay.
Didn't like,
No, I'm curious.
the answer was that no.
No.
Didn't want to be consolidated into.
With this, the water company did not want to be? Okay.
My general opinion, with all due respect, it's $3.5 million worth of, plus the borrowing, to have your own freestanding building. I mean, one could design a very nice set of offices and garages that are separate from.
That's true.
So the opposition came out of the water company?
Yes.
Okay.
Bob Gardner does, he's got his ideas, and that's the way.
Good at what
And
he
he's,
does.
and he's doing very well. I mean, he never comes
Good at
to
what
the
he
town
does.
for, assistance, and he's just running a
Well,
great
that's
company.
That's not
Well-
totally true.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
He'll be here in a month. We'll talk. We'll chat.
But at that, I think Peter McEachern was the one who asked that question, as a matter of fact, and.
Well,
You got the same answer, Peter?
yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there was more than one question on that at more than one time. You push, in a committee like ours, you push and push to a point, and then, because it's not our role to get into, we don't have the teeth to go any further than push. So it's, and the push went nowhere.
Okay.
We don't want to do it.
That's an interesting idea.
But there's no question that amongst ourselves, we felt, I mean, that's a natural, so it's, no, I'm not quite sure how you deal with that on our committee, point. Whether we should even put a comment in it or whatever, I don't know.
Well, I think this discussion here is fine. I think one thing, and you mentioned this, it goes back to a bigger subject, which has always been a pet peeve of mine, is a space needs study. We have all these locations, and they're all certainly important, is how do we make the best bang, how do we get the best bang for the spaces that we have? And the comment of the Water Station 2 Fairgrounds fits right into it.
Yep.
And so, to me, it's easy to bring it up, but it'd be great to have a space needs study that we can quantitate
Before we spend,
before we spend it. So I think it all ties together. And I'm glad that your committee is certainly has
well,
asked the right questions.
we provoke the discussion, but because that's not the only one that, needs to be wrestled to the ground a little bit, or decisions made, whether it's going the way we're going right now, or we want to change it and do something different. I don't think there is a space needs, wasn't there one set up at some point? Space needs study and
Yeah.
recommendations? Is that?
We're still working on it.
Right. Okay. And aside on that, I found this out, the WPI students are also doing some sort of space needs study. I haven't seen it yet or anything, but if it's like what they did for the fire, it certainly might be worth looking at. So, I haven't seen that. Anyway.
I haven't either.
Okay. Further questions?
I was curious what the $4 million in real estate sales, I mean, is that just plucked out of the air, or is it?
Well, no, we have $8 million in the real estate sales fund.
The yard sale funds that have been set up, that town meeting approved to dispose of some town properties that have been coordinated by the planning department and town administration, has a fund balance of $8 million. So $4 million of that will be used for capital projects.
So those properties have already been sold?
It's already
It's in the fund.
in the bank, so to speak.
And it's another quick, this is sort of a free cash question.
Yep.
A little bit, again, showing my ignorance, but
No ignorance.
I remember from last year with Capcom that, seven, whatever the number was that, that we were going to spend, and then a big chunk of it came out of free cash.
Correct.
On
Right.
this table, it says certified free cash was 5.2. Is that 5.2 million after last year's capital spending dollars are sort of
Spent?
spent?
Mm-hmm.
So this is new free cash after last year's free cash.
Right. We had a little over $5 million last year, and we have a little over $5 million this year.
Free cash gets recertified annually.
I sort of understand that, but I guess, again, I
This is this
understand
year's
that I don't entirely get the accounting part. Because you say, okay, this bucket of free cash, we're going to use it for these capital expenditures, and then when you recertify, it's new funds that have arrived.
Yeah, think of it, every year is its own free cash.
Okay,
How about that?
this is a new number of free cash.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good way.
Has to be certified.
Further questions? No? Or Dave? Yep.
And maybe to Libby, the repairs to the town pier, you seem to have shown up a few times in the past couple of years. Were they ever made? Or
We've had some
ongoing.
made and some are not.
There's been some Band-Aids put on it.
Patches.
The problem is we had, last year, if you remember, we had an engineer come in and do the evaluation. Well, the total cost of that ultimately is going to be $800,000 to $1 million. So we're looking at different alternatives to fund it. One would be possibly raising the fees of the users of the town pier, that dock pier and stuff. And that's got to be a proposal put together and sent to the Board of Selectmen for their review, everything first. But in the short term, well, not short term, but we're looking at about $1 million to fix that.
did we get, excuse me,
Oh, no, go ahead,
did we
yeah.
get money from Sandy relief, that storm?
Maybe
Hardly any, yeah.
not
Okay.
even 100, maybe 100.
Okay. I guess going back to my own questions on the Band-Aid, is this money that's going to be well spent for permanent repairs?
Yeah, we replaced some of the, on the outer end there, we had to replace some of the finger piers.
Okay,
I mean, not
right.
finger piers, the
So,
pylons.
the pylons,
And
okay.
those will be pylons we don't have to replace.
Okay.
as well. The other part of that is, we funded the floating dock, if you remember, replacement. Well, that fund's still there, and we still have everything, but when they got into it, they figured out they had to do some dredging to get that, to be able to do it and make it work properly so that it's not banging on the bottom and everything. Well, we're in the process of having that permitted now. So it's like peeling layers of an onion over there.
And Chief, just going back to, I mean, it wasn't a couple years ago, wasn't there the thought at one time is for a multi-million-dollar appropriation to fix the town piers, or I got my facts wrong on that?
No, I don't remember that.
Okay.
All right. I mean, ideally, we'd like to fix it out of the waterways fund and continually maintain it out of the waterways fund. But it's going to depend on how far and fast we can repair it that way. And, you know, interesting enough, there was just the selectmen yesterday approved, I heard a little bit about an acquisition of property right next to the pier that may open up the ability to add fingers, which means adding more revenue opportunity to the pier and opportunities for people to get more space, which might change some of, if that's something that's viable, it might change some of what we have to do to that. We might be able to displace some of the project to that part. So, you know, that we haven't even had a chance to look at that yet.
Okay. So that's a lot going on there. All right, thank you. Further questions? Christie?
Libby, have we taken ownership of the Boulevard? Is that?
No, not yet.
No.
Close though.
Okay.
I think we have one public hearing in January. We had a public hearing at the beginning of December. There was an objection, which triggers a second hearing. I'm pretty sure it's the other way.
Okay. Does this hinge on any of that happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can't go forward with.
We'll have to own the road before we can.
Got it.
And
We expect to own it before we do the road.
Makes sense. All right. Further questions? Okay, very good. Thank you for a good presentation as always. I want to commend you for the hard work, a lot of stuff going on.
Got a great committee. I'm really.
It's, yeah.
John, I forgot to introduce you, John, as one of the members.
All right.
I think they knew.
Don't
that.
remind us.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
That's fine. No, yeah, and I guess from as we talked about the school, when that number comes on in, if you don't get it before I do, I'll be sure to send it so you can pass it on.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. I think then we're ready to go on to the discussion and a review of the fire union contract settlement, which is on the last page of our packet today. And I don't know if Brian or Chief, you want to give it an intro, but if I just ask you just to come up to the mic again for us. Thank you. Thank you. Have nice holidays. Okay.
Okay, so you have before you the estimated cost analysis in the same format as we previously showed you.
Yes, sir.
Again, one point, the health insurance is noted as here, is assumed at 12% across the board. One thing I do want to point out, because I know that Joe had asked this before, and I want to just kind of get to it right away, is that in fiscal 15, there were 3 step moves laterally across the schedule. There's 7 step moves in 16, and there's 4 in 17 that are accounted for in here, and those steps are between 5% and 8% increase, which is above and beyond the 2%. So that would be what's driving the $500,000 number. So between the two, I was expecting that you.
I got 3.5% compound.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that answer that then?
Well, I want. Yeah.
I assume that's Brian. Thank you, but I sort of assume that was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steps.
Thanks. All right. Very good. Questions? Just open it up.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's sort of the same thing, Brian, but you said the medical insurance is, plugged in at 12%. But are there steps that affect that too? Because I get 15% a year, not 12% a year. So is that something else that drives sort of accruals or?
Let me get my.
It's 48.8% 3-year versus 3-year, and I backed into 15% a year. It's more than 12.
I did the 12% on the basis of the actuals.
Okay.
Fiscal year 14 on the basis of budget. So that's how it goes. The amounts in fiscal year 14 are somewhat hidden. They don't show. We have just projected the year. So,
Right.
David?
Yeah, to me on the insurance, the bigger question is, I mean, I know you do a plug number and so it'll calculate out whatever it calculates out. The real question is that what we're experiencing? Are we experiencing greater numbers than that?
We're actually,
Quite clearly, as we all know and talk about, it's going to eat us, ultimately.
potentially.
24% of payroll for just the individual and the family plans, right?
Right.
That's what we calculated?
I don't anticipate that it's going to be that every single year. That's the number that we use based on what our consultant gives us based on current claims, the way claims are running. That obviously is based on only a 4-month history right now, moving forward. Truthfully, it could go either way over the next, as we get more claims history for this year. So my expectation, my hope is that it goes down. But quite frankly, we could have a spike in claims that we don't anticipate. That's based on what we have presently before us. And that's, I have to kind of go on what he advises me on what to use for the number. So my hope is it doesn't reach the 12%, that it goes in a positive direction, and we don't need that number.
I seem to remember from one of our other meetings on the police contracts that there is an open negotiating item about 90-10 sharing versus 80-20 sharing. I don't know whether that's something you can talk about, but if the unions agreed to pay 20%,
Yes.
I assume these numbers would be reduced, right?
These numbers would change, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Further questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I know it's been talked about, pardon me, briefly on the selectmen level, but with the Affordable Care Act, in 2018, the penalties for Cadillac plans comes into play. In hearing the selectmen talk about it, they just kind of gave it a mention, but are there plans being put in effect that are going to take this into consideration?
We're currently having intense discussions with our healthcare consultants on the best way to handle that and what it may mean for us. I think that there's still a lot of uncertainty even on their level on what's going to happen. I recently have heard that there's a push to delay the implementation of that even longer. But we have certainly had discussions, and it's certainly something that we're very aware of and working to mitigate.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Well, hearing none, if everyone is satisfied, I would ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'm not sure
how
to phrase it.
I guess a motion to, how about a motion to adopt the fire contract as presented? Would that sound right to you guys?
Good to me.
Okay, how about that?
I make a motion that we adopt the fire contract as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. And discussion on that. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good, John, thanks for staying, Mark. We'll be seeing you. Okay, well, we're almost done. Next item, well, I don't know, almost done. Next item is review and finalize motion for citizen warrant articles for the 2015 annual town meeting. In light of what we discussed on Monday, are there any articles anyone would like to discuss, talk about on that? I did not specify them, but I'm certainly comfortable to talk about the ones that was highlighted on the agenda previously. Any reconsiders? You sure?
Back on this side.
Chairman?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, how far, I had to leave early, so how far did you
Not
get?
very far, much farther. I don't think we did anything after you left, come to think of it.
Oh.
I don't think we did. We took up the HGC articles, which were tabled till there was some analysis whether or not we would receive that or not will come. But so we did not, we stopped at V, which was the, we took a positive motion for the shells, but I think you were here for that, for the town clerk's office? I believe you were there for that, though, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. Yes,
Yes.
that was it.
It was. So that was the last one, I think.
That was the last one. And, but like I said, we're free to talk about any of the others that we did not move on, or, no, we'll wait. Okay, going once, going twice?
So
go
before
ahead. No,
we
that's
go
fine.
to third,
Yeah.
on you, the servers,
Yes,
did we punt that to IT?
we're looking for an opinion from IT.
Okay.
Honestly, my opinion on that is that if this committee so fell to supply a motion, I don't feel the necessity to wait. I'm perfectly, from my standpoint, I would accept the motion on that. And the reason why is I think some valid points were made for alternatives to $11,600. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, and let me share with the committee, I did,
Okay.
just because I seemed to be the thing that I was on that day. I've looked at the services that you can get with Laserfish and using Amazon Web Services, which is cloud hosted. And if I've got the right service for $88 a month, less than the cost of your cable bill per user, you can host Laserfish with 20 gigs of data, all sorts of backup and 99.99% uptime, and basically run it off of the service. And there are plenty of there's the one that's shows up most prominently is in Cambridge. So it seems like I guess I would like to see Catherine really seriously look into it, and which is why it's always been hard for me to get behind this article.
Christie?
Yeah, I think probably she was enlightened maybe to a few options. Whether she wanted to agree with them or not, I think that I think she'll kind of take a look, and I think in the meantime, we can get an idea from IT what their thought was for requesting this from her. But I'd be prepared to vote against it at this point.
Okay.
Me too.
In lieu of, researching other options.
Yeah, that's,
Just a comment on that, a record if I could.
Sure.
On this particular article, even I know some of you may be unhappy with me on the other one.
which was that?
That's true.
The shells.
Yes.
I'll
admit it. I'll admit it.
Yeah, that's all right. I will take the heat on that one.
There's a thing called reconsider, but that's
Yeah,
all right.
but, all right.
No, I'm gonna-
But
sorry.
I guess just as a comment, and as, again, one of my newcomer comments, I find it really disheartening that despite being an independent elected official, the town clerk can't work through the town AT department and get a collective decision on equipment to do her job. And certainly, I gave her the benefit of the doubt after listening to the story for 2 years on the shelves, but I felt on this, it's an obvious case where the town ID department should weigh in, and I don't know, I guess I don't know all the stories, but it certainly
it's fine.
it's certainly unfortunate that she feels she can come to the town independently.
I'm kind of torn personally, and also from my position as the town clerk's relationship. She is an elected official in this town, and she and as a result, that position gets that respect of the elected official. But the budget is approved in Article 8. Her salary, and this is the general fund article, her salary is approved in Article 7. So ultimately, we and the voters approve her budget. And I sometimes feel that gets lost in the translation. And as for shells specifically, there is a process that is in place for all town departments to request increases in, they'll call it an operating cost, expense in this case. Where it gets a little bit foggy is because she is an elected official. And do we hold her to the same standards that we would hold the police chief is here, or the fire chief? On paper, technically, yeah, we do, but then there's the points that you're bringing up. And so we certainly, I always like to look at each issue individually, myself, and I think we as a committee do. But I'm always a little bit concerned when requests are made outside of the process.
Right.
That's my big...
Well, I certainly felt that a year ago as a member of the Capital Program Committee, and I feel that way today.
Yeah. Did you want to say something, John? Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, there's a history here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a lot of smiles out in the room. There's a history here, and for those of us who have been here long enough for the history, this is things like this come up every year by the town clerk. Period. It's because she presents herself as being different than anybody else, and she doesn't feel she's beholden to go through the process. And so she tries to circumvent the process, that's my opinion, by putting a warrant article in. And when we approve a warrant article by that, we are assisting her in what she's doing. That's why I get upset about it, because we're just sorry about it. But
Well, don't get upset.
well,
Oh, by the way, there is one little thing.
if everybody did that, it would be chaos.
Well, it would be chaos. I agree with that. But getting back, I know we're talking about the microfiche, but getting back to the shelves, there may be a little bit of a problem with that motion as passed, because the motion was appropriated from free cash. I think we're a little bit premature in doing that. I didn't say anything at the time, because I figured, we'll see where it goes. But we may have to revisit that for that reason alone. But anyway, that's an aside. Getting back to, Christy, I'm sorry.
I'm content with my vote, by the way, just so you know. But I will say, as to the microfiche,
Yes.
I asked her straight out, I said, if you could put this off for a year, she said she could. So I'd be happy to make a motion not to adopt
Motion not to.
Article
Okay.
U.
All right, so we have a motion not to adopt Article U. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. All right, discussion on the motion, and we'll limit it to Article U. Comments, questions about Article U? Okay. Hearing none, then all those in favor of the motion not to adopt signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries, not to adopt. Excuse myself. Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion for citizen articles? Have a good holiday.
Thank you all.
All right. Hearing none, then why don't we move on to the date of our next meeting is January 5th, which will be a discussion on revolving funds, and I'm looking over at Brian. I'm sure we'll get that information to review before the meeting at some point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That would help.
And then, one other note, there have been some scheduled changes with departments presenting, and January 6th is actually there really is nothing on the docket, so I would propose, or I'm going to actually, unless I get some objections, to cancel Tuesday, January 6th meeting. In light of that, I think we'll be hearing there is no department that will be hearing, and pretty much we're doing pretty good on these articles, and by then there will be, I don't expect any more information for us to discuss. So if everyone's okay with that, yes, sir.
I didn't have really enough time to really get through the capital.
Neither did I.
Yeah, so I didn't know if as soon as that is available, I don't know, Martin, if you just got it today, this morning, but as soon as that's available, if we could get it, maybe the revolving funds, if we could get that a few days before.
Well, you can. The capital was,
There were extenuating circumstances.
Okay.
they
in
only
this.
finished finalizing some of it yesterday, and then we had to make a couple last-minute changes to some of the stuff that Phil needed for which required help from Cinder and her staff. So it
Okay.
was certainly, it was not intentional by any stretch.
No, I understand. I'm sure if we
We'll
have
give you the benefit of the doubt.
follow-up questions, we can always still.
Well, here's okay. Well, actually, that's a good point. Thank you. I meant to bring that up before. Yes, we will, because the departments will be coming in, and we can ask the departments directly. I think for everything, and in fact, I would also, with the revolving funds, it's that we'll be getting an overall presentation. But some departments have revolving funds, and the same thing in there too. So I think with the capital, is that this isn't the end of the discussion for any of those. Okay?
That's the way it's always been.
Way it's always been. Exactly. And this year, probably with the fire station in the school, will be even more.
More so.
Okay.
Big time.
So, and unless anything else, everybody have a nice holiday, enjoy your weeks off, and then next meeting is Monday, January 5th at 2014, 4 o'clock, right here.
And Madison.
2015.
15. Oops.
15.
We got to change that.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you. You caught it. I missed it.
I always do these things.
All right, so I'll ask for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, everybody take care. Have a safe holiday.
Matt, as you know, I won't be here that meeting.
Okay.
I'm back on the 11th.
Back on the 11th.
I'll make the 12th, meeting of the 12th.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. So that, what's that?
Argentina.
Really?
You know, now, I've been to...
Gonna work Christmas Eve.
on business,
And then I'm gonna go,
I always wanted to get to the Patagonia.
mother, 90.
See, we're not doing that. We're doing 3 nights in Buenos Aires and then 3 nights in